Hello and welcome to this edition of Newsroom on ESPN where we'll be looking at all the developments in Australia as the season kicks into gear. Of course, the women's team are in the semi-finals of the T20 World Cup, and that's being covered extensively by our team in the UAE. So we'll focus on what's been happening around the men's team, and it's fair to say there's been a bit going on. In summary, Cameron Green is out for the season, Stephen Smith won't be opening anymore, and there's a 19-year-old in the Australia A squad who's been compared to Ricky Ponting. Joining me to discuss all of that is Alex Malcolm, who has been on top of all the details in recent days around these significant stories. It's fair to say that things took on a different complexion the moment Cameron Green flew home from England with a back injury. He's now opted for surgery and is out for at least 6 months, maybe longer. There's a chance we don't see him in Test cricket again until next summer's Ashes here in Australia, the dates for which were incidentally announced today, just to add onto the stories of recent days. But Alex, the build-up to India was all set to be about the batting order of the incumbent top six. Andrew McDonald had said, barring injury, that was going to be the top six. We've now, of course, had this injury. It's kind of been lost in the debate a little bit that Green was only 4 matches into his comeback, but of course that superb 100 in New Zealand made it look as though he was really ready to kick on. So how much are Australia going to miss him against India, and how drastically does it change their plans for the summer?
It changes the complexion of their whole setup, Nasha. I mean, Green just adds so much to their 11 in terms of what he can do in all 3 phases. He's obviously proved himself not only at first-class level, but now with that groundbreaking 100 in Wellington back in March, that he is a bona fide Test match number 4, 174 not out, won the game off his own bat, carried the innings on his own, batted with the tail, did all of the things that you'd expect of a mature Test match number 4 to do in a difficult situation. It's a huge blow, and it changes the whole complexion of the side because of his bowling as well. He is a genuine fourth-seam option, not to mention the hole he leaves in the gully. It's a huge problem for Australia to try and fill, and they can't fill it with one particular player. They're going to have to get creative in terms of how they find other overs and then also how they reshape that batting order.
Just on that bowling aspect of it, how significant do you think it's going to be? I mean, it has been mentioned in recent days how for a long time Australia have managed without a specialist all-rounder, I guess, really since the Shane Watson era, really until Cameron Green came along, a little bit of Mitchell Marsh, as you said, in recent months. Last summer, of course, the big 3 quicks got through every Test match, plus the New Zealand tour. Does that feel realistic this time, or do you think the impact of losing Green's overs could be significant part of that story?
I think the overs aren't so much of a problem. I reckon they can fill those because on average he only bowls about 9 overs in a day, even less than that potentially in a Test match day. It's more the sustaining of pressure that he is able to provide because his overs on a surface that suits him. His extra bounce and pace means that Pat Cummins can maintain the pressure. He can keep the quicks going. He can keep 4 quicks going if the condition suits, rather than having to turn to line early and bring spin into the equation when seam is dominating the game, or go to a Mitchell Marsh who doesn't have the same ball speed and the same extra bounce and threats that Green has. So that's probably more the issue. That's what Green's been able to do in home Test matches in particular throughout his career. They'll have to work through that. And then, as you mentioned, the quicks are being planned that it's unlikely that they'll get through all 5 tests unscathed as they did last summer. I think Australia are planning that maybe a couple of guys will have to be rested at some stage, and the likes of Scott Boland and Michael Neser will be leaned on.
So the big second strand, I guess, to the Cameron Green story is also the Stephen Smith story. The day it was confirmed that Green was undergoing surgery, it was confirmed by George Bailey that Stephen Smith won't be opening. He didn't quite go as far as to nail him into number 4, but it's hard to see where else he's going to go. So it's been a fascinating juncture, this, to Stephen Smith's Test career. Includes the 91 he made at the Gabba, and then a trickier tour of New Zealand where the ball nipped around and a lot of top-order players found it tricky. To kind of sum it up, Alex, how did we get to this point in the Australian Test team? Was it something for the greater good, i.e. it got Cameron Green back into the Test team and that 170 you mentioned, or has it been a bit of a mess of Australia's own making?
I think a combination of both. Now, sure, I think what's been forgotten in the debate is that Smith put his hand up to do the job. It's very much gone under the radar that Smith himself when the opportunity presented itself in January, when David wanted to retire, put his hand up specifically in public and in private and said, I'm really keen to do this. I want to change of scene. I want to get out of the monotony of batting at number 4, and I want to try my hand at opening to batting. It will help us as a group because it allows Cameron Green to slot in at his preferred position, which is number 4. Green actually didn't like batting at number 6. It didn't suit him. And Smith just wanted a new challenge to get out there and face the new ball. He'd been battling, I think, well, it had been obvious in his strike rate that he'd actually been battling against the middle overs bowling. Teams had started to find ways, not necessarily to get him out, but to slow him down, to slow his run scoring ability down and frustrate him. And that had been leading to dismissals that were very much uncharacteristic in terms of the Stephen Smith we all know. And his record hadn't been that bad. He averaged 42 in the year of 2023, but that's a long way short of the 55, 56, 60 even in previous years. So a combination of all those things meant that Smith was keen to do the job, and he felt like he proved himself in that West Indies series when he made that wonderful 91 not out. People probably undersell how good that innings was in the face of a wonderful spell of fast bowling from Shamar Joseph. But then New Zealand was really hard, as you mentioned. None of the openers across those two series really did any good. So batting was difficult. But he's obviously felt like it was too hard for him, and he has felt like he probably wants to go back to number 4 where it's more comfortable for him. It's something he's used to. And that's created a little bit of a headache on a whole host of fronts. And they're probably fortunate that Green's injury is going to allow a relatively seamless transition, but there's some consequences from that as well in terms of how comfortable the next opener is going to be when they come into the role, knowing that they weren't the first choice. And there'd also be some questions in and around the team. It might not be said explicitly to Steve, but I'm sure there'd be a little bit of frustration that he's put his hand up to do it in the long term, wanting to do it full time, and then decided, no, that's not for me, and that had to reshuffle things. But it is Steve Smith. I think he's earned enough credits, and I think a lot of people should understand that, you know, he has earned enough credits to have an opportunity to do something different because he felt like he needed it. And it's also worthwhile for him to say, or put his hand up and say, yeah, it was too hard for me. I need to go back to the spot where I'm best suited and can best contribute to this team.
I guess it may remain the great unanswered question of what the outcome would have been if Green had remained fit and we'd cycled through all the other top 6 options of who could go up and join Usman Khawaja. I guess it might remain the great unanswered question which way the selectors would have gone with that. But the final major point to pick up from this last week, the third major announcement, was the Australia A squads, and that links back now to this potential vacancy, or this very likely vacancy at the top of the order. If we assume they're going to go for an opening batter, and as I said previously, it's not 100% nailed on, but it looks very likely, then you've got 2 experienced batters in that A squad, Cameron Bancroft and Marcus Harris, and then 19-year-old Sam Konstas on the back of twin hundreds in the Sheffield Shield, youngest player to do it since Ricky Ponting in 1993. And on the flip side, the significant omission, it feels, of Matt Renshaw, who was the spare batter in the last 2 Test series. So I guess, Alex, the question on everyone's lips, you can kind of sense the cricket season's building up down here. People are starting to talk about it a little bit more. And the big question is Konstas, 19 years old, a handful of first-class games, is he a realistic chance of a Test debut in Perth in a few weeks' time?
I wouldn't go as far to say as realistic. I'd say it's possible, absolutely. The big tests for him will come, firstly, this week. He has to face Scott Boland at the MCG, and if he can get runs against Boland at the MCG, Todd Murphy's playing in that game as well. So 2 Test standard bowlers. He made 100 against Boland at the MCG for New South Wales and then peeled off another 100 for Australia A against India A. He has 4 first-class hundreds in less than a month. Heading into a Test series against India, it'll be very, very difficult for the selectors to turn a blind eye to that and say, no, he's not quite ready. The flip side to that is that he's been compared to Ponting because Ponting made 2 centuries in a Shield game as an 18-year-old, and Konstas is the 3rd youngest behind Ponting and Archie Jackson to do that. Ponting did his feat in March of 1993 and did not play Test cricket until December of 1995. So the Australian selectors back then let him sort of develop in the background. Greg Shippard, incidentally, was Ponting's Shield coach at that time in Tasmania. Shippard's now Konstas's coach at New South Wales. So they've been through this before. whether or not this panel, which traditionally is quite conservative, would lean the same way and say, look, let's let Sam Konstas develop a game and a framework, get tested at Shield level by Bond, the MCG, NISA for Queensland up at the Gabba, the likes of that, go over to West Australia and face a good West Australian attack, let him settle there, see if he can pile up 1,000 runs in a season and then think about him later on, or whether or not they gambled with him as a teenager and said, yep, get in the deep end, go and face Boomer and Shami and Siraj. I don't know. It'll depend on what happens in the next 2 weeks, but it is not out of the realms of possibility that he plays.